Good evening and thank you for joining us. The historic Chippewa Park carousel will remain closed until further notice following a collision involving a stolen vehicle that occurred this past weekend.
A man and a woman who were involved in the incident have been charged by city police with theft of a motor vehicle and mischief over $5,000. Joe Sadowski has been covering the story and joins us live in studio. Joe?
Thanks, Mitch. 26-year-old Brandon Meredith and 24-year-old Kara Oshkapeketa of Thunder Bay were taken into custody on Saturday. Since the arrest, they have both been released and await their next court dates while the repairs to the carousel take place.
Yeah, so that was a completely unexpected incident with the carousel over the weekend. So definitely a shock to get that news, and we were eager to find out exactly, what kind of damage it was going to result in.
The Chippewa Park carousel has been enjoyed by families for over 100 years. Sometime early Saturday morning, a stolen vehicle jumped the curb in the parking lot, bounced off a tree, and ran through the fence around the carousel. Thankfully, the damage was fairly minimal, and Parks and Open Spaces manager Corey Halverson says it's extremely fortunate the main area of the damage was a chariot that was going to be replaced in the fall.
From that perspective, very lucky. So all of the work that went into the restoration of the horses and all the other components were basically left unimpacted. However, we're inspecting it today. We have some people out on site just to make sure we understand exactly what the impacts are to some of the more structural elements of the flooring and the support posts.
The group of volunteers involved in the restoration process have raised over $1 million, and over $600,000 in volunteer hours have been spent on the carousel. If inspection goes according to plan, the best case scenario is that the carousel could be operational within days.
Yeah, so again, we're optimistic. I think best case scenario, if we do the inspections today and find that the structural elements are basically intact and the repairs are minimal, we'd be optimistic to be getting it up and running again within days. So if something more substantial is found during the inspection, that obviously could change the timelines.
The park is still planning on moving the carousel to a new indoor space for the summer of 2024. A 26-year-old man involved in the crash turned himself in to city police on Saturday afternoon, while a 24-year-old woman was arrested Saturday night. They both face charges of mischief and theft of a motor vehicle. Joe Sadowski, TBT News.
An inquest into the 2016 shooting death of Daniel Lagarde at the hands of the OPP in Nipigon is now underway in that community. The mandatory inquest began this morning at the Nipigon Legion Hall. The jury is hearing from 18 witnesses over the next 2 weeks. Carl Langdon was in Nipigon today, and we'll have that full story on the late edition at 11.
The big project along River Street has reached an important milestone, but unfortunately for people who depend on the route, the completion date has been pushed back once again, this time until early to mid-September. It's been 15 months now since River Street was closed between Algoma and Balsam Street due to a culvert collapse. The new multi-plate metal arch over McVicker Creek is now complete, and construction crews have begun the process of backfilling the massive gorge with rock and gravel. That work is expected to take around a week and a half. Once the process is complete, there will be a utility and electrical repairs that will delay the final paving until September. City project engineer Mike Vogrig explains the next steps.
Yeah, so they're just started the backfilling now. We have at least about 10 days probably to get to the top of the culvert. Then they have to start doing some utility work. So we're looking at another 4 to 6 weeks before everything's paved and we're out of here. No, like above ground, everything's going to look the same. What was there before was just two standardized, pretty big culverts, and we're replacing it with a multi-plate with no bottom. So on top of the road, there's not going to be much of a difference. But if you're down looking at the river or fishing or something, you'll see a much bigger opening there, yeah.
City officials had previously estimated that River Street would reopen in late July and then sometime in August. The original contract for the project was $2.5 million, and Vogrig says the final price tag won't be determined until the work is complete.
24-year-old Thunder Bay man is facing charges after attacking paramedics and city police. It happened at around 9 o'clock last night near the corner of Simpson and George Streets. The man needed medical attention, but he became combative with Superior North EMS, so city police were called in. The man then allegedly attacked one of the officers and spit in a paramedic's face. He's now facing 2 counts of assaulting a peace officer and 1 count of mischief.
with a little over a month until heading back to school, the Education Minister.
It says the government is pushing ahead with changes that will support student achievement and increase transparency. Siobhan Morris has the latest.
With a little over a month until the first bell, the government's pushing ahead with changes the Education Minister says will support student achievement and increase transparency. In a memo sent last week, Stephen Lecce says boards are expected to post more details about what educators learn on professional activity days, screen kids in kindergarten through grade 2 to see if they need help with reading, and work with parents and staff to develop multi-year student success plans.
Many of the things that we're now being asked to make very public have always been public.
The president of the Public School Boards Association says the legislation standardizes how information is shared, but boards already post strategic plans every 3 to 4 years and annual priorities.
They look at what's been happening in their schools and then make plans for the following year to support the schools that need the support or some of the students that may be struggling a bit.
Their areas of focus:
reading and writing and arithmetic, as they say, as well as well-being.
One assistant professor in education says the government's focus on transparency,
in my view, is a distraction tactic
from tangible, though more expensive, difference makers.
We know that the student-teacher ratio is one of the most powerful opportunities to improve student outcomes.
The size of classes as high schools de-stream grades 9 and 10 is also a concern.
You can put priorities in place, but when you don't have the supports to go along with them, it's pretty hard to achieve those goals.
While the province is hiring more educators, including 300 dedicated to math,
300 people across the province isn't going to meet the needs of the students. We need to be looking at what's happening in the classroom and providing those direct supports
to help kids do and feel their best.
The strike with some 3,700 workers at 27 Metro grocery stores in the Toronto area is entering its third day.
Yeah, none of us make enough money to even shop here. None of us.
I can't afford to, pay my student loan. I can't afford to pay rent. And that's ridiculous. Even if I can't shop at Metro, what's the point of working for a company that won't pay me?
The workers walked off the job at midnight on Saturday after they rejected a collective bargaining agreement. The union's national president says that agreement didn't properly address the deteriorating working conditions in grocery stores. The affected stores will be closed for the duration of the strike. Pharmacies, however, will remain open. The striking Metro grocery workers are calling for increased wages, stable working hours, and job security.
A big development in a high-profile Thunder Bay immigration case.
Last year, Abu Henna Mustafa Kamal was ordered to return to Bangladesh by Canada Border Services, but he's now one step closer to winning the right to stay in Thunder Bay. Lee Noonan has more.
Abu Henna Mustafa Kamal happened to be in the office doing some paperwork with his legal team when the email came in with the good news. He'd received approval in principle for his permanent residency application.
Feels good. It feels a big relief. Yeah, finally, after all those months of being in limbo.
The approval means he meets eligibility requirements for permanent residency, but it's not a guarantee his request will be granted, explains his lawyer, Jennifer Dagsvik. It does mean that his application is being considered and he's on the right track.
He had to put in quite a number of pieces of evidence about, how he got to this point, all the work that he's done in Thunder Bay as a volunteer, his education, the work as in the restaurant as an entrepreneur, that sort of thing. And we also put in all of the community support letters. I've never seen so many community support letters come in for somebody.
Dagsvik said the level of community support was likely compelling to the immigration officials who had the discretion to grant Kamal an exception after initially losing his immigration status. Kamal says he's not sure where he would be without Dagsvik and her team.
I was fighting to bring food on my table. At the same time, I had to fight to stay here. So I don't think there's any way I would be able to navigate with this complicated legal process by myself. So there's no way that would be possible.
This clinic is really important for helping members of the community that are often overlooked, people living in poverty who are also dealing with precarious status that without this clinic wouldn't have access to legal help.
Since opening less than 2 years ago, the Newcomer Legal Clinic has worked with more than 350 people on immigration issues, big and small.
Abu's unique, of course, because of the many connections that he's been able to make in our community. But we see people in our clinic all the time who they're making a big difference and doing lots of work in this community, really filling important jobs. And so in that sense, Abu's case is typical as well. Everybody we see through this clinic is here because they want to be in Thunder Bay. They like Thunder Bay.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Students in grades 11 and 12 have been busy at the Roots Community Food Center's urban farm next to Volunteer Pool.
They're hitting the dirt to gain experience with growing food and other skill sets in a large garden setting. Carl Legden has the story.
Run in partnership with the Lakehead District School Board and funded by the Ministry of Education, the Roots Urban Garden has been hiring summer co-op staff from grades 11 and 12 for over a decade.
See, there's two pieces. Yeah, you need to put...
The summer program sees students pick up essential skills both in and out of the garden. Lakehead Board Superintendent Jane Lower speaks very highly of the program.
For most of them, it's their very first part-time job, it's their very first summer job, and what we find is they have the confidence and the resume by the end of this 8-week program to go out and find a part-time job. They also have their first bank account, they start the savings, they learn about financial literacy.
Students also gain 2 academic credits at the end of the season, all while making a living wage. Roots Community Food Center's program director, Erin Stevens, spoke to us about some of the skills students pick up over the season.
How do you work in a conflict situation? How do you actually communicate? And how do you actually get your needs expressed? How do you open a bank account? How do you save money? How do you spend money?
When asked what skills he's improved this summer, student staff member Marcus Stevens had this to say.
Definitely getting up on time and getting out of the house. This job makes me want to do that. So it's been a lot easier to fix my sleep schedule for the summer and wake up pretty early and get here. It's like a great kickstart to life, and they help you with pretty much everything you could ever need help with.
Angelina Willett, another student co-op employee, says the breadth of experiences that make up the program has been her favorite part.
Well, we get to experience so many different things. Like sometimes we'll go out and go to different farms. Other times we'll cook, like today, where there's a little bit of, like cutting food. Other times there's animals. I got my hair eaten by a donkey a few days ago. There's just so much to do. It's so awesome.
The work students engage in goes towards facilitating community programs like Roots Food Center's Meals for Seniors and Elders. Carl Langdon, TBT News.
The return of the annual Buskers Festival saw thousands of people flock to the Bay and Algoma area this past weekend.
The popular event was back after a 3-year hiatus. It featured live performances from over 30 entertainers. Jessica Clement has the story.
The Bay and Algoma area was crowded this weekend, with people wanting to enjoy everything the Buskers Festival had to offer. And the event was clearly missed over the past 4 years. The festival featured over 30 performers, all excited to showcase their talents. Event coordinator Emily Shandruck says the turnout exceeded expectations, with the 2-day festival seeing around 3,000 people each day. She says they're happy to be able to showcase various local talents to broader audiences, and that having events like the Buskers Festival is important.
A lot of our performers weren't actually live performers before the pandemic, so I think a lot of people discovered, a hobby could actually be a little bit more, and, now they're able to showcase, and maybe you'll see them, at a local pub or a restaurant or something coming up, and you'll be like, oh, hey, I saw you at the Buskers Festival.
The Kaminariwan Taiko drumming group wowed audiences with their performances. The group started out in 2011 after taiko drums were gifted to the local Japanese community by Associate Professor Dr. Takafumi Hirose. There are currently 14 drummers in the troupe, and drummer Angela Foreman says the performances and being part of the group are rewarding.
There's a lot of camaraderie, and the age range in the group goes from 18 all the way through 79. So it's an intergenerational group, and so there's a lot of family involved, and it's a really close-knit group. So every time we get to perform, it's a lot of fun for us.
Musician Mary Frances Omikin, also known as Mary Melodies, was another performer attendees were able to watch live. She says while she's been singing and playing guitar since she was 9, playing at the Buskers Festival on Saturday and Sunday were her first public performances.
It was a little bit nervous, but I've been really happy to do it because I love just seeing the smiles, and I had 2 little girls run up and say, "We're your biggest fans," and that made me so happy. It just made my heart jump a little bit.
With all the positivity for this year's festival, Shandrick says they would love to host the event again next year. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
And what a fun and great event that is. Absolutely. We'll turn to weather now. Fiona, a little bit of a gray start to start the work week.
Yeah, and a little bit below normal for this time of year, but not too much. We had an overnight low of 12, a high of 22, but the Humidex still made it feel like 27. That was under a lot of mist and mostly cloudy, although we saw a little bit of sunshine starting to peek in here and there in the afternoon. Winds were almost non-existent, just 2 to 6 kilometers per hour from the west. The real sunshine is further west in Fort Frances. They've had some sunshine this afternoon. They're currently at 24, although the Humidex is feeling a little closer to about 28. Similar temperatures as you head into Atikokan, Dryden, and Kenora. Red Lake, unfortunately, had a lot of local smoke in the region. That started to clear off this afternoon, but unfortunately they've been left with mostly cloudy skies. But it is much drier, so the Humidex really not affecting the region very much. And that is the trend heading eastward into Sioux Lookout at 23 and Armstrong at 19. Greenstone is currently 22. They've had variable skies all day right now. It is partly cloudy, but they've gone from completely cloudy to almost completely sunny, so it hasn't been consistent for most of the day. Temperatures near the 20-degree mark along the lake shore and down into Sault Ste. Marie there at 21. They range from mostly cloudy to partly cloudy for much of the afternoon. Right now, the clouds are winning the battle. Here in the city of Thunder Bay tonight, we are going to drop down to 13 under partly cloudy skies. Winds will stay relatively light, around 6 kilometers per hour, although we might have the odd gust up to 15 coming from the north. And as we head into Tuesday, Thunder Bay is actually looking, I'm going to head over to this side, looking to stay pretty dry, but there is the potential for rain starting to push in late in the afternoon on Tuesday, and that could bring a little bit of shower activity right before somebody turns on the heat again, and I'll have more details on that later on in the news hour.
Thanks, Fiona. Well, Justin Trudeau is reacting to news of a labor dispute agreement. We'll have that and more when we return.
We now have a situation where there is another offer, there is another potential deal on the table.